Charles, we've got another. Oh, wait a minute. I almost forgot. Damn it. See, we had a very funny intro planned.
I'd go with it.
Yeah, we're going with it. Because it is a family affair here, Charles. The kingpin of crime, Joe Biden, and of course, his bizarre daughter, Hunter Biden, who's now a podcast star with EDM Dope Moby and Dumb Joe. How are you, Charles?
I'm very well, thanks, Jason. Thanks for asking. I've moved out of a nation that sadly is I think in a death spiral, and that's the United Kingdom.
Oh, I thought you were going to say America.
Well, no, I think one of the dimensions we'll talk about it a little bit now and more in depth in the First Amendment forum, but one of the things that I think has not been given enough scrutiny is the degree to which the government of the United Kingdom, I think, has been subverted by a mixture of people enthralled to China, people enthralled to India, and then others who do not have the best interest of the United States at heart. And it actually is really sad for me to say this, because I first went to England in 1976, and then it was pretty bad in 1976 and in the late 70s and early 80s. But then with your man Reagan and his pal Margaret Thatcher, England really was rocking and rolling in the 80s and even in the 90s. And then I think that something happened. I think we'll find out in time. Maybe they got together with Kissinger, and maybe they looked at this and they said, you know what? Much rather be tight with the Chinese, much rather cave on Hong Kong, much rather give away everything we can give away to get inside China than continue to play along with the United States, because the United States is only 300 million, China's up at 1.5 billion. So, I look at London, which is a city I loved, is filthy. Same problem with homeless people, crime, vacant businesses, stupid, terminally stupid politicians. People on the right are to the left of us. I mean, and they're all in for socialism. They're all in for fuck the First Amendment. We don't need that shit in the UK.
They hate it.
Yeah, I know, and it's not like you could go and say the boffins in the UK have got everything right. I mean, I was staying at an airport hotel, and I got to the main terminal thing, the main place, at the terminals 2 and 3, and I needed to get to terminal 5. So I walk for like 2 miles.
Heathrow.
And I get to the place. Yeah.
Heathrow, you're saying. It's terrible.
Heathrow. Yeah. And I get to terminal 5 where you're supposed to go, and there are like 12 bureaucrats there in uniform, and they're saying, you can't go this way. And I wanted to say, you morons, why didn't you tell everybody that 2 miles back?
Yeah.
And so now I've got to walk another 2 miles back. And everything is just, and then they have the system where they don't announce the gate. I spoke to you before I got on the plane, and I was a little frazzled. The boarding time was 2:20 local time. They didn't put the gate up until 2:16.
Oh man.
So you had to get, fortunately I had guessed correctly and I wasn't that far away. Then of course the plane was late. Anyway, I think the UK is a fantastic short across the economy. I don't think they're going to get back together. I think Europeans are interested in punishing them. And frankly, I just don't think the United Kingdom is relevant. I don't think they should be on the Security Council. I don't think they should play a leading role in NATO. I don't think we should be in NATO. I seriously question whether the United Kingdom under the present government is actually an ally, or more likely a rival/enemy of the United States. I think they're doing us in around the world. If I had a business with any assets, I'd take it out of the United Kingdom. It's, I don't like saying this because I really do enjoy much throughout the United Kingdom, but just as a business proposition, it's a gigantic turd.
Yeah,
right
and I'm
now.
not speaking for you, Charles, but of course, nothing we ever say here on this show is investment advice. This is just your personal opinion.
Right. I'm just reacting to the recent experience. I mean, the people of England are nice, but it is not a capitalist country. It is
Mm.
not a country where people are financially literate. I think it's infected by wokeness. Um, Indeed, it was kind of sad for me to go around where I went and to see places that had been on the upward trajectory back worse than I remember them in 1976. Now, that's not a good place to be, particularly when you compare. It's just a superficial analysis on my part, but when you compare what I viewed last week with what I saw a number of weeks ago in Singapore or in Dubai, where it's a marvel of progress compared to what it was even 10, 12 years ago, let alone back to the 70s.
Hmm.
So, King Charles could take his fleet of private jets and his addiction to talking to plants and foisting climate change bunk on us from living in multiple palaces with a fleet of Rolls Royces. He can go F himself. He doesn't know what he's talking about. And pushing everybody in the West, allowing his big name and his vast wealth to be used as part of the project to put everybody money and everybody in these small pod homes where we can eat insects and worship
Hey,
Klaus Schwab, whoever comes after him. I mean, guy's seriously demented. I
now,
think.
Charles, we've got some comments here because Veronica and I had this question as well. You mean that the EU is punishing England for Brexit because they're not happy about that?
The EU is very unhappy about Brexit, and England's decision to leave um, didn't put a knife in the EU, but it wasn't helpful. And people in Germany and France and elsewhere have long memories. And if England under some future government came begging to come back into the EU, I think there'd be a heavy price to pay. And besides the EU,
It stinks.
yeah, it's a PU. I mean, it stinks to high. And again, if you were going to go and look at the many nations that are part of the European Union and say, okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to avail ourselves of the major advances in technology and streamline our local, regional, federal, and European-wide governments, and reduce the number of people in these bureaucracies and take advantage of the gigantic increases in efficiency that are available that we're taking advantage of in our shows, and Crowdsource the Truth is leading the way on. You're not seeing any of that, and it was interesting to me to put a nice fine point on it. I saw last week, the news that I get here is primarily on the internet. I saw some study that even after the COVID, restrictions have been lifted across our federal government, only the maximum percentage of employees that are working in the office is 50%, with certain uh, agencies having only 7% of the workforce showing up to work. That's the best news I've heard in a long time. Because, right? I mean, because if this thing can function with at best 50% the number of people
Yeah.
showing up to work, I think independence, I think people who pay taxes, I think trying to produce and sell products and services to the global market and local market, those sorts of people seeing this news and then learning, as they will, that the government officials are much more highly paid when you consider benefits and vacations and
Yeah.
pensions and stuff like that, and even absolute salary levels. I mean, I just think the project of doing a restructuring of our vast bureaucracy in the U.S. and in the West, in Western Europe, is something that really somebody's going to do it. And I don't know if the U.S. will be the first country to do it, but somebody's going to try it, and it's going to work. And capital is going to come flooding to the first advanced economy that looks at the public sector and says, no, you can't have 12 idiots in uniform, standing there talking, organizing Tinder dates at the underground at Heathrow. Sorry about that. You just can't do that. When you basically you would need one or maybe two
Yeah.
So the economies I think that you could derive both from wholesale, if it were me, I would abrogate public sector union contracts. I just say, listen,
Can't have it.
we can't keep this up, and sue us.
Did
But
you see
we're,
this, Charles? The Labor Department is saying, hey, you people got to get back to the office. There's not enough people in the Department of Labor.
the Labor Department should be shut down.
Exactly.
It's
They're not doing anything.
It's a labor and insanity, the Labor Department.
Yeah.
And again, I've talked about this in the past that when I do, people think are certain that I'm crazy. I just believe I could be crazy. Other people are certain. But I've talked to you in the past about how in the US, we shifted the capital, right? We shifted it from, I forget if it was New York to Philadelphia, or Philadelphia to New York to DC, I forget which direction, but we shifted it twice in the United States. Brazil has shifted the capital several times. Nigeria.
Brasilia. Right.
And I just learned that in Indonesia, they're creating a new capital city. So it's not crazy, particularly when you think about the crime and the pompousness and the choke hold that these public sector unions have in the Northeast. It's not crazy to say under a Trump or somebody like Trump, let's have a national competition to reimagine how government functions, taking advantage of all this American and other technology, and let's put it in the center of the country, geographically.
If they're not going to work anyway, what's the difference? You could telecommute from anywhere.
Right. But I think perhaps you need to have several regional centers. Maybe you need, I don't know how you do it, but you certainly, Washington, D.C. is a bad joke. I don't want to ever go there again.
I might go next week.
Well, but I mean, to get some battle gear. I mean, you got congressmen, people on the congressional staffs are getting held up. I read something that in Baltimore, the situation is so dire there with people peeing all over the buildings. The buildings are falling down or decaying because too many people are just peeing and dumping in the streets. San Francisco, you got to learn how to tap dance to get around the streets. There's so much shit on the sidewalk. I mean, it's just enough.
Yeah.
And then,
it's very bad.
Then you get, Joe Biden, his performance the other day when he was announcing this rail investment. And honestly, this is you need a Simon Cowell style commentator. When Joe Biden gives this speech, you should have, the network should let him start. Gets up there and he says, "Well, what is it? Over $1 billion, 300 million, trillion, $300 million in rail." What are you talking about, douche?
You can't speak. You have no idea where you're going. What are you doing here?
Right, but this is beyond embarrassing, right? And anybody on the Biden team who would defend this needs to be fired, right? Because clearly they have no standards, right? And I would guess, dumping on my old alma mater, Yale, this news that 80% of all the grades that are given out are A's. I mean, that makes every grade meaningless. And I would bet that may explain why Jake Sullivan did so well at Yale. It changed the scale. The guy's a dangerous fool.
Well, now they're getting kicked out for anti-Semitism, and what's amazing is everybody is like finding all kinds of crazy things this Dr. Gay or whatever her name is was writing months ago, and they're like, here's the problem.
Well, no, I'm familiar with this because Claudine Gay's nomination or her candidacy to be president of Harvard was extremely controversial. And there were quite a few people at the time saying this woman is not a serious scholar, and they just let her slide, let her in, and now we see what's happening. But it's not it's not simply Harvard has been going the wrong way. Some would say ab initio. My father would have said that from the beginning. But when I got there in '78 to business school in the fall, they had a serious problem with what's called critical legal studies. And that problem eventually, that way of thinking eventually became this idiot, the diversity idiot. What's his name?
Critical race theory.
Last name Kendi, Kendi. Ibrahim Kendi, who's a certified racist moron. They have these people just spouting garbage but they've got the title president of Harvard, or chair of this department, or chair of that department. And I'm delighted to see the big league money at some of these places just saying, you know what, fuck all you guys.
Yeah.
Not only are we not going to honor our pledges, we're not going to hire any of your graduates.
Yeah.
Which is where I am. I wouldn't hire a recent graduate of Yale Business School. No way.
Neither would I. I would actually, if I owned a company of significance, I would make an announcement that, guess what? Starting right now, nobody in Harvard. So it's going to be 4 years at least until we hire anyone from Harvard, until you fire all these people, and we're not starting again. I'm going to make the degree these Hamas members are paying for worthless.
Well, this actually, to put in a plug for one school that many people may or may not have heard of, is called Babson, Babson. And that, maybe it's corrupt too now, but it used to be filled with people who were just earnest and hardworking, and for whatever reason didn't get into the supposedly top schools. But I have hired graduates at Babson, and they were phenomenal employees. So there's hope, but certainly not at the Ivy League, certainly not at the Seven Sisters. And it's much like the situation I encountered in Ukraine in 2010 to 12, where because of the company that I was involved with, we got high-level introductions to the academic superstars in the country at all the great universities. And there are some there. And they told us, look, you cannot look at resumes. They're all false. And people just, we sell the grades here.
Wow.
We don't get paid enough. So that's how we live. So
oh my God, that's crazy that they would admit that. One quick thing, Charles, Tall Oaks mentioned that if EU punishes the UK for Brexit, Andrew might start sweating again. That's a good point.
Well, this is another great family. You can imagine, I wonder how much time Hunter Biden spent with Prince Andrew. Birds of a feather.
We've
Randy
got an asshole in the chat here, Charles.
Only one?
Oh, it's the biggest one on the planet, though. So we're going to address that for just a moment here. It's an interesting psychotic obsession that George's brother has with me, but we're going to handle him. Now, you might have seen, Charles, I just tweeted this, but I went to an event last night where President Trump was speaking, and how do we deal with this stupid idiot here? There we go. And see, we've got a government employee, Charles, who is trying to destroy this operation. Oh, wow. And now we've got him doing defamation. It's amazing, Charles, how obsessed they have become with me. The reason they're doing this is because everything that we are doing is driving right to the heart of this government conspiracy. And George's brother should be very afraid he's going to spend the autumn years of his life in jail. I don't care if he works for the CIA. This whole entire apparatus will be smashed. And David Swigert will be crushed under the weight of justice. So fuck off, you psychopath.
Well, along those lines, the Tucker interview of Alex Jones and the musing that maybe Jones would get back on X, the fact that Elon put him back on X.
It's great.
I commend to our viewership that interview of Jones. It was quite good. But one of the things that struck me, we've been trying to do this. None of the major media people, whether it's Schweitzer, who wrote early books about Ukraine and the Biden family being enthralled to Ukraine, and Mitch McConnell's family being enthralled to China, the CCP. Nobody seems to be taking the obvious major point here, which is that when Trump was president, the first time he was impeached, after the Mueller deal fell apart, after Mueller was completely and utterly discredited by his ridiculous testimony, Trump speaks to Zelensky and says, why don't you enforce your laws and investigate Biden family corruption in your country? Right. By the way, we're sending you a lot of money. And that to me seems to be a very good thing that Trump did. So I hope that whatever administration follows in 2025, I hope that we really step up the penalties against Americans, whether in government or otherwise, for siphoning funds out of the public treasury in these corrupt schemes, because we are out of money. But anyway, here we have Biden and Hunter and the Biden family taking all kinds of money from various oligarchs, but especially those in Ukraine. And that seems to be what got everybody really, determined to get Trumpy out of there. And we talked about it at the time. But now you have this moron, this demented fucking moron, the president, getting up and, having given his somber speeches, which he's done, the red and black speeches and all that, right? Having given those speeches where he demonized the people who did not support him, called them basically un-American and, worse. He has the balls to get up the other evening, and say, I know things are tough, but we need to come together as a nation and make sure that we get as much money as possible to Ukraine. And nobody's saying, now, wait a minute. How come the people at the FBI didn't understand just how much in thrall the Biden family was to oligarchs in Ukraine, to mysterious people in China? We've told in the past that there was some angle involving Romania that Solomon hints about, but hasn't really taken home yet. How many foreign interests have the goods on this obviously dirty family, which, can't seem to do anything correct? I mean, if this were a serious exercise of trying to, mainstream journalists performing serious investigative work, you'd ask the question, how is anybody in the Biden family, including Joe Biden, how did they acquire a security clearance? How did they retain a security? How does Pete Buttigieg have a security clearance? And Jake Sullivan, for that matter. How did Hillary Clinton get one? Right? How did John Kerry get one? His son was working with in Rosemont Seneca, his stepson. All these people around the dynastic political families on the right, the Bushes, the McConnells, and others, and on the left, Democrats, the Pelosi's, you just go down a long list. All these people are plucking money out of the U.S. Treasury one way or another. And we're out of money.
It's really bad, Charles. I hope that something substantial can happen. And what's even worse is that our tax dollars are being used to
burn.
They're being burned. I mean, $500,000 grants to the NIH to pay mentally, let me not say something that's going to get us bounced, but mentally ill psychopaths who are manipulating the courts, jamming up how many people are sitting in jail waiting for a court date that aren't getting the attention of a corrupt criminal like Valerie Caproni because she's too busy babysitting George's asshole brother, who's trying to prevent all of this from coming to the fore. I saw a video, Charles, where George said something about Peter Smith offering emails to General Flynn's son. Now, I've never seen any evidence of that, but if that is true, it's an interesting wrinkle in the story. And if it's not, it's an interesting wrinkle in George going right to the heart of what I've been talking about relative to the government trying to pinch you from before the day I met you.
Well, we know, we saw that when Alex Jones's interview with Tucker, he talks about the fact that Tim Cook and others decided to take Alex Jones out in 2017.
It's terrible. Tim Cook should go to jail too.
And we saw as well that these various disinformation, misinformation, governance efforts that typically involve a UK angle, UK stink tank,
yes,
right? Working in league with people here in the United States. I mean, this whole effort of talking about misinformation and disinformation. I mean, it's just absurd. Experts on disinformation. Did they get their training under Methuselah in Washington Square Park? I mean, there's either truth or falsehood, right? And sometimes there are gray areas. Sometimes you don't have enough information to discern whether it's true or false. But we don't need some pointy-headed moron with a fake set of degrees where we don't really know how they got the grades or awards that they're given. We don't need these self-anointed Karens trying to tell us or help us tell what's true and what's false. The simple starting place, if you look back over the recent history of our involvement, every major initiative that got the Chicken Little dance going of the sky's falling. Every single initiative has proven false, right?
Yes.
Go as far back. The issue with Barack Obama, the issue is not where was he born, although that is potentially an issue. The real issue is who vetted his credentials.
It's the FBI.
In any serious job that I've ever had, people don't just say, "Okay, Charles, we like your resume. We're not going to check anything." Where was Barack Obama for 5 years after he supposedly graduated from Columbia University, Columbia College? What was he actually doing? Who employed him? How come nobody from Columbia remembers him there? I mean, he's a guy who went from, nobody knows who he is, to leaping into becoming president of the Harvard Law Review, which, as we've discussed in the past, is just a business job. It's not the notes editor. It's not the person who is the best student or one of the best students in the class. But how did he go from an obscure person nobody remembers to having the chops to jump in and be president of the Harvard Law Review? How did that happen? And nobody seems interested, other Jack Cashel, Jerry Corsi, people like it, but none of the mainstream people. If this were Donald Trump's resume, right, you'd be going. There would be 100 starry-eyed recent graduates of 15 of the journalism schools working for Woodward and Bernstein and a bunch of people like that, just dry cleaning Obama's background. But nobody wants to do that.
Charles, let me interject because we're out of time here, and we're going to continue our conversation in the First Amendment Forum where we can really let loose. Luckily, George's brother is so stupid, he's just been blocked for the duration of the day, so he won't be able to disrupt the John Cullen show that's coming up tonight. We're doing another episode of Web of Deception, and that's going to be a good one. Dave just blew his chance to disrupt it. I'm sure he has other sock puppet accounts that he'll use. But people can join us in the First Amendment Forum 5 minutes from now on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth, odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, and crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. People should know that malicious mental patient in the chat is actively working to destroy each and every single one of these payment platforms that I utilize because he is an insane psychopath who is employed by the NIH and has been enjoined from interacting with these social media companies. So in an effort to try to circumvent Judge Doughty in the Western District of Louisiana and the Fifth Circuit, the U.S. government is engaging in clandestine subterfuge and all kinds of activities through the idiotic Swigert brothers, and they are going to be brought to justice. Join us in 5 minutes for the First Amendment Forum. Thanks for watching, everybody, except for you, Dave. See you at your arraignment.